This episode has been brought to you by justinform.com. If you're tired of being censored, tired of having your data stolen and sold, go to justinform.com, a social media site where all voices are welcome.
Coming from the mainstream community. You all are here, so you all know that. However, there aren't a lot of people here that know that. Or there are not a lot of people on the internet in general that know that. And so what Facebook does, they come up with all these neat and awesome ways to increase censorship, to convince us that that they're doing us a service. And they came up with a new way today. They've announced that they're going to get rid of the trending section because nobody ever uses the trending section. Nobody has ever used a trending section to know what's trending on Facebook. And here's how they're going to replace it. They say instead of having the trending section, which would essentially trend all news, instead they came up with a bigger and better way to make sure that you get the news that they want you to see. Now they have a breaking news tab. Oh, and it gets better. Not everybody gets the tab. Literally, only 80 publishers get the tab. 80. All 80. How many billions of people on Facebook? Or there was a billion. I think they lost. They're not at the billion anymore. But yeah, hundreds of millions of people on Facebook. Really at this point, thousands and thousands of publishers, content creators, etc. And they decided, you know how we'll show that we want to keep people on our platform? What we'll do is we'll only give preference to the 80 people that we want. And that'll show them that we really care about allowing the independent community and allowing to be able to be seen at all, and contribute to the deflection of fake news coming from the mainstream. They would never allow that. They've been going out of their way to suppress it. But it also makes sure that they can control literally every single thing you see. Now, what's a little ironic about this, however, is that this is the same Facebook that has been throwing out commercials about how we just want to be family focused now. We want to be family focused. That's what we want to do. But they said they're getting rid of the trending section, which trended not just quote unquote news, like the things that we talk about on a day-to-day basis, but everything. And they're going to replace it with a funnel of the news and broadcasters that they approve of. That's just awesome? How altruistic of Facebook. I'm glad that they're always looking out for us. It's so sweet of them. They're just cutting the fat, really, if you think about it. That's all they're doing. Now, somebody like myself is always curious. I'm like, wow, who comes up with these amazing ideas? With these groundbreaking, inspirational, there's these ideas are just going to be a total success, because everybody knows, my goal in life is to emulate Facebook, because they've been so successful since they've actually started trying. Actually, obviously you can tell that's sarcasm, but literally before they started trying to do things to make people happy, openly trying and announcing every single move they make, they were actually better at doing their job. But now they want to control things. And when people start wanting to control things, it's usually because they got an order from somebody a little bit higher than them. And so, I was like, who was in charge of making such a brilliant change that will ultimately lead to the success of Facebook above all platforms? I looked it up, and I believe her name is Alex Hardiman. Alexandra Hardiman is an interesting person. She has a lot of connections. This is her third job, by the way. And she is in charge of the news production for the Facebook platform. Now, where did she work at prior? You know, because clearly fake news is something that she challenged. She loves discussing fake news. As a matter of fact, let's check out an article from TechCrunch. This is in 2017. They actually hired her May of last year. And if you recall, that was around the time they came out with all the ways they planned on pretty much suppressing anybody they don't agree with. Now, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. Taking this role is a deeply personal decision for me. My great-grandmother was a radio and television pioneer in the Midwest and spent her life providing Americans with access to high-quality news that we know the New York Times always delivers, especially over the last couple of years. My grandfather spent his career as a broadcast journalist tackling racial discrimination and social injustice. I grew up in news, and I spent 10 years at the New York Times, transforming the company into a mobile-first organization with products like the Times iPhone news app. The weight and opportunity of this challenge is both humbling and thrilling, and I can't wait to get started. This is how the article starts out. Facebook's role in spreading news, especially fake news. That's how the article starts out. Facebook's role in spreading news, especially fake news, has been the spotlight since last year's presidential election. Now it's promoting Alex Hardiman to lead its news efforts on the product side. Hold up. You're trying to combat fake news. Okay. Let's remember that, right? They're trying to combat fake news. I want you to remember that. So, Hardiman worked at the New York Times, most recently as vice president of news products, until joining Facebook last year. She wrote on Facebook that her new role will involve working with news organizations to monetize and develop new formats, while also partnering with teams in Facebook to keep curbing false news. That means she was hired to promote fake news and ensuring that certain news organizations would never, ever be able to become monetized. That's actually what that means. I wanted to go ahead and decipher that for you. So, if you all recall, there was a story that got released a while back, right? 17 intelligence agencies all agree that Russia hacked our elections in favor of Donald J. Trump. And there was another story that came out about, I think, around a year after that story dropped. A massive retraction. You know what newspaper? Do you know what newspaper put that out? What news organization put that out? That was the New York Times. It was the New York Times. What? So, they're not even trying, people. They're not even trying. They're not even trying to conceal the fact that they are using Facebook now, and Twitter, by the way, is coming up next. They're getting rid of their trending section also. So that people like myself, like the journalists that you know and love, can never be seen, no matter how important that news may be. So, they hired the woman in charge of news products, Vice President of News Products, at the newspaper, news organization, who put out the initial fake news. that sent the entire freaking world into a frenzy. What in the actual hell? And what makes it hilarious, because remember, she was hired in May of 2017. The retraction happened. The election happened in 2016. The retraction it's 2018 right now, right? Yeah, I'm not crazy. So the retraction had to happen. Actually, I think it was around May. No, I think it was probably around June, May or June. But it happened either while she was still at the New York Times or shortly after she left. That's the moral of that story. And instead of say, okay, look, lady, you were in charge of a lot of stuff. Your products were putting out the fakest news story in history. So you can keep your job. Just don't bring that shit here. And they do the total opposite. They give her total control. Like the Facebook Watch stuff, that's her. But somebody like myself would never be allowed on Facebook Watch. I'm not joking. I was trying to apply and it wasn't even letting me finish the application. Now they'll allow people like Fox News, but they'll allow conservative pundits. Don't get it wrong, but you have to have that because that's controlled opposition. They'll even allow they'll allow TYT, but TYT's controlled opposition. I would say we're screwed, but luckily these three people came up with a platform where we won't have to deal with this anymore. And I believe it is called Just Inform. Oh, y'all are already here, so you already know. But it gets better. So I'm always curious. I'm like, wow, because she was fairly young. She's like in her early 30s. And that's a huge position. And she rose to the ranks of the New York Times. Think about it, people. Think about it. Like, think about this. She started from literally the bottom of New York Times and rose to vice president of products in 10 years. Well, earlier than 10 years because she spent 10 years at New York Times. So in less than 10 years, she rose to the vice president of products. And when somebody, especially a woman, because no offense, the industry, like getting that high up for a woman is still difficult if you don't know people. And so she probably knows some people, right? And so you got to ask, well, what did she do before? Like, what was she doing before she became a New York Times, whatever she was doing, a journalist? And so when I ask that question, I always know the answer. I always know the answer I'm going to get. I hate looking it up because I hate the rabbit hole. I go down these rabbit holes, people. And I'm bad because like something as simple as a name can set something off in my brain. I'm just like, oh God, why do I recognize that? So you go to her LinkedIn account and you find out that her very, very, very first job was management, like out of college, I mean. And she graduated from Columbia, Ivy League. Was management director at Oliver Wyman Consulting. And that name rang a bell. And I couldn't think of where I heard it from. But there are a few other bigwigs that like hail from there, or like a few other big corporations or organizations that work with Oliver Wyman. The biggest, by a little bit, just by a little bit, the biggest though, would be the combination, one of their clients is the combination of the World Bank and the IMF. In fact, they're holding a conference for them coming up here pretty soon, actually. Yeah. She was management director at a company whose biggest clients were the World Bank and the IMF. Now, does that mean that her personally is like that well connected that she's connected with everybody at the IMF and World Bank? No. But it's someone who now has a lot of ties to a company with a lot of connections and a huge network, who's probably extremely ambitious. And the connections were significant enough that she was fast-tracked to vice president. You don't make vice president in 10 years, less than 10 years, in a company like the New York Times, unless you have connections and you have a significant amount of experience. I mean, a huge amount of experience. So, the World Bank and the IMF are two of their biggest clients. And of course, you know, companies like these always have these like global initiatives. Theirs is called a world initiative, a lot different world initiatives. And they do things like equality for schools in Africa, you know, prevention of human trafficking, and all kinds of things with the economies of different nations. And they even are part of, they're partnered with Dutch Bank. The moral of that story is A to B to C. The World Bank is essentially now in control, indirectly or otherwise, of Facebook. Not that they weren't before, but if you remember the other day when I did the video, I said, y'all, I don't think Hillary Clinton's joking about this CEO of Facebook thing. I think that she's being dead serious, and I think it's more of a possibility than what people may believe. And it turned out we're getting attacked from all sides. Think about how idiotic that sounds. We don't want people to be trending. We don't want people to know what's going on all over the world. What we want is for 80 people to be able to tell us everything from their own perspectives and nobody else's matters. Because obviously, as we know, they've been suppressing. But that's okay. Capitalism will take its course. I know you all are jumping ship. Obviously, soon enough, I will be as well. We'll be bringing everybody to Just Inform. It's insane to me that they think they're going to get away with something like this. They're literally trying, they're not even being shy about it, people. There's no coincidence. Do you think this is a coincidence that it happens right before the 2018 elections? 2018 midterms? Do you think this is a coincidence that it happens right before the 2020 elections? Like I said, we learned a lot from the 2016 primary and the 2016 election. But so did they. And that's become apparent. But hey, luckily for us, we move a little bit faster than they do, huh? So, if you are watching right now, I hope that you will have been recruiting people and telling them, hey, you need to hop off of Facebook and come on to Just Inform before it's too late. We're going to go on a little break. We're going to head into our next story about Imran Awan and some recent evidence that shows that the DC Metro Police Department, they're not doing their jobs as usual. If you've been paying attention to Seth Rich, then you already know this.